The sun was slowly setting over the quiet countryside, painting the sky with soft shades of orange and pink. Birds were returning to their nests, and the gentle breeze moved the tall grass in waves. On the edge of a small, secluded property, a woman was sitting on her porch, enjoying the calm evening. She had lived here for several years, far from the busy city life, and had built a life that suited her perfectly. Her house was modest, but well kept, surrounded by trees that offered privacy and protection. She had chosen this place for peace, but also because it allowed her to live freely with her 2 dogs, who were more than just pets. The dogs, both large and strong, lay nearby, alert even in their relaxed positions. They had a disciplined look in their eyes, a quiet energy that made it clear they were not ordinary pets. Many visitors had commented on their intelligence and obedience, and those who came closer than necessary had learned to respect their space. The woman often smiled when people admired them, though she never revealed too much about their past training. They had served alongside her in ways most people could not imagine, and their loyalty was unshakable. Inside the house, the woman moved quietly, preparing a simple dinner for herself. She preferred things straightforward, avoiding the unnecessary clutter and distractions that came with a busier life. The kitchen smelled of fresh bread and simmering vegetables, comforting aromas that reminded her of home. She had learned to enjoy these small, peaceful moments, appreciating the calm after years of a much more hectic and unpredictable life. As the evening progressed, she looked out the window, observing the subtle changes in the landscape. Shadows lengthened as the sun dipped lower, and the gentle rustling of leaves filled the air. The dogs occasionally shifted, their ears twitching at every sound, a sign of their alertness. They were always aware of their surroundings, trained to respond immediately to any sign of trouble. She knew their skills were extraordinary, though she rarely had to rely on them in her quiet neighborhood. Across the nearby road, a small group of individuals was moving through the shadows. Unaware of the presence they were being watched by, they were a gang, experienced in taking what did not belong to them, confident in their ability to intimidate or overpower anyone in their path. Their eyes scanned the area, looking for the easiest targets, and they had set their sights on the woman's property, assuming it would be an unguarded, simple home to rob. They had no idea what they were about to encounter. Back on the porch, the woman finished her meal and leaned back in her chair, glancing at the horizon. She had a habit of reflecting at this time, thinking about the choices she had made and the path that had brought her here. Her life had not always been calm. She had faced challenges and dangers that required careful planning, quick thinking, and a strong sense of responsibility. Those experiences had shaped her, giving her the skills and confidence she needed to handle unexpected situations. The dogs lay closer now, sensing something in the air. Their ears perked up, and their eyes locked onto the distant shadows that moved with intention. The woman noticed their subtle signals, understanding the quiet communication that had developed between them over the years. Without saying a word, she knew something was approaching, something that required attention. She remained calm, trusting in the abilities of her companions, knowing they would act if needed. The evening continued, the sun finally disappearing behind the trees, leaving the property bathed in the soft glow of twilight. The woman lit a few lamps around the porch and garden, casting warm light across the yard. It was a serene scene, the kind that often made people feel safe and comfortable. But beneath that tranquility, there was a sense of readiness, a silent preparedness that came from years of experience and training. Inside, she moved from room to room, checking that everything was in order. Doors were locked, windows secured, and the simple routines that marked her evenings were carried out with precision. She poured herself a cup of tea and sat by the window, observing the night as it settled in. The dogs remained outside, patrolling the perimeter with calm vigilance, their presence a reassuring constant. The gang continued their approach, unaware that their assumption of an easy target was completely wrong. The woman's property, quiet and seemingly unprotected, was actually guarded by highly trained companions who had faced challenges far more dangerous than any ordinary criminals. The night air was filled with anticipation, a tension that neither the intruders nor the woman fully understood yet. But the stage was set, and the events that were about to unfold would test the instincts, training, and courage of everyone involved, as darkness fell completely. The woman remained alert, her mind sharp and ready. She thought about the lessons she had learned in life, about the importance of patience, observation, and staying calm under pressure. She knew that experience often spoke louder than force, that careful preparation could turn even the most dangerous situation into a manageable one. Her dogs were her partners in this understanding, their loyalty and skill a reflection of her own capabilities. The night deepened. The first signs of the gang's presence became more apparent. Faint noises in the distance, shadows moving near the edges of the property, subtle changes in the environment indicated that the intruders were getting closer. The woman sipped her tea slowly, maintaining a composed demeanor. While the dogs adjusted their positions, muscles tensing in readiness, every sense was alert. Every instinct finely tuned to detect and respond to the unexpected. She reflected on her past experiences with these animals, remembering the missions, the training exercises, and the countless hours spent developing the bond that now provided both security and companionship. Each dog had been trained to follow commands with precision, to act decisively, and to protect without hesitation. Their skills were unmatched, and their loyalty absolute. She trusted them completely, just as they trusted her. And that trust was the foundation of the quiet strength that surrounded her home. In the distance, the gang made their final approach, confident but unaware. The woman watched silently, observing the patterns of their movement, analyzing their behavior. Her heart remained steady, her mind calculating the best course of action. She knew that confrontation was inevitable. But she also knew that with careful planning and the abilities of her companions, she could manage the situation safely. The night held a sense of anticipation, a moment frozen between calm and chaos, where experience and training would soon be put to the test. The scene was set perfectly for what was about to come. The quiet home, the loyal dogs, and the determined woman formed a strong line of defense against any threat. The tranquility of the evening masked the readiness beneath, a hidden power waiting for the right moment to reveal itself. The gang, confident and unaware, had no idea that they were about to face an obstacle far greater than they had ever imagined. As she finished her tea, the woman stood and walked to the porch, her gaze steady and unwavering. She called her dogs softly, a subtle signal that was understood without question. They moved closer, bodies alert, eyes focused on the approaching danger. The calm evening had transformed into a scene of quiet anticipation. Every movement mattered, and every decision could change the outcome. The night was about to test courage, skill, and loyalty, and the woman was ready, fully aware that her companions and her own experience would guide them through whatever was to come. The night had grown darker, and the cool breeze carried the scent of wet earth and pine from the surrounding trees. The woman stood on her porch, her eyes scanning the shadows beyond her property line. Her two dogs were moving silently, alert and poised, muscles ready for action. The peaceful evening had faded into an eerie calm, a quiet before the storm that only she and her companions sensed. The world seemed still, but every instinct screamed that something was approaching, something with dangerous intent. Across the small road that bordered her land, a group of men crept through the underbrush. They were experienced in finding easy targets, criminals confident in their ability to strike quickly and leave before anyone could respond. They laughed quietly among themselves, sharing half-jokes and gestures. Certain they had found a house that was isolated and vulnerable. They had no idea what awaited them. They assumed the house would be empty or occupied by someone too weak to defend themselves. The woman watched them carefully. She had trained herself over the years to notice even the smallest details, the way shadows moved, the rustle of leaves, the sound of footsteps on uneven ground. Every tiny movement gave her information, allowing her to anticipate what might happen. Her dogs mirrored her focus, their keen senses alerting them to each subtle change. Together, they formed a team that communicated without words. Each action understood instinctively. The gang reached the edge of the property, stopping for a moment to observe. They were confident, checking windows and doors, sizing up what they thought would be an easy entry. One of them pulled out a flashlight, shining it briefly across the yard, and the light caught the reflective eyes of the dogs. The gang froze for a second, noting the animals, but they quickly dismissed the concern. Thinking of them as ordinary pets that would be more bark than bite, the woman did not panic. She had faced far more dangerous situations before, and she knew that calm observation was her strongest tool. She noted the positions of each intruder, the distance between them, and the potential points of entry. She began to prepare silently, using the skills that had served her well in the past. Her mind raced through possibilities, evaluating risks and deciding how best to respond without putting herself or her companions in harm's way. Inside, she moved with precision. Checking that every door was locked, every window secure, she kept herself calm, her heartbeat steady, knowing that her response would determine the outcome. Her dogs, sensing the tension, moved closer to her, ready for any command. They were disciplined and focused, trained to act with accuracy and speed. Their loyalty and skill were unmatched, and they trusted her completely. As she trusted them, the gang had decided to approach from two sides, thinking to surround the house and prevent any escape. They were methodical, moving carefully to avoid detection, unaware that their every step was being monitored. The woman's dogs had taken positions near the entrances, eyes glinting in the dim moonlight. They were silent and still, blending into the night. Waiting for the precise moment to act, the criminals whispered among themselves, planning their first move. One of them crouched near the back door, testing the lock with tools they had brought for quick entry. Another circled the side of the house, flashlight in hand, peering into the darkness. Their confidence was growing, blinded by the assumption that nothing could stop them. Every step they took, every careless glance, was being observed by sharp eyes and even sharper instincts. Inside, the woman remained calm, thinking strategically. She had faced threats before, situations that required split-second decisions and a steady mind. She considered all possibilities, knowing that hesitation could be costly. She trusted her dogs to respond immediately if anything happened, relying on their training and her own experience. The quiet tension in the night was a familiar feeling, one that had always sharpened her senses and allowed her to stay ahead of danger. Suddenly, a small sound from the underbrush made her ears twitch. One of the dogs had noticed a movement the humans had overlooked. Without a command, the dog shifted slightly, a subtle signal that danger was closer than the intruders realized. The woman took note, preparing herself mentally for what might come. She knew that timing and precision would be everything in the moments ahead. The gang began to split, with one group trying the back entrance while the other approached the front. The first few steps were cautious, but the criminals were eager to make their move quickly. They ignored the warning signs, laughing nervously and making small talk to mask their tension. They had done this before, and they assumed their experience would carry them through, unaware that their assumptions were dangerously flawed. The woman remained composed, watching their every move. She could anticipate their actions, understanding their patterns, and predicting their next steps. Her mind worked like a map, plotting positions, possible reactions, and the timing necessary to act effectively. She trusted her instincts and the instincts of her dogs, knowing that together they formed a barrier that could not be easily breached. The gang reached the first entry point, trying the back door. They worked quickly, tools in hand, unaware that the dog near the door had already positioned itself for a precise response. The animal's body was tense, every muscle ready, and its eyes focused on the intruder. The dog had been trained for this exact scenario, and it waited for the perfect moment to act. Silent and invisible to those who underestimated it. The second group at the front began to examine the windows, tapping lightly to check for weak spots. They moved carelessly, not realizing that the dog stationed nearby had already noted their presence. The animal's attention was unbroken, every sense focused on the humans who thought themselves clever and unnoticed. The woman observed silently, aware that patience and observation were critical. One wrong move, one premature action, could jeopardize the safety of all involved. As the minutes passed, the tension grew. The night air was heavy with anticipation, the quiet only interrupted by the occasional sound of leaves rustling underfoot. The woman and her dogs remained in a state of readiness, each aware of the other's presence and abilities. The gang was closing in, still oblivious to the full extent of what they faced, Their confidence was slowly being tested by the subtle indications that something was not as simple as it seemed. The woman thought about her training and past experiences, recalling situations where calm analysis had made the difference between success and failure. She knew that control, precision, and timing would be key. Her dogs were extensions of that strategy, capable of acting decisively when necessary. The bond between them was strong, built over years of mutual respect and trust, and it was this bond that would guide them through the night. The gang made their final moves. Reaching the immediate perimeter of the house, the backdoor group was crouched low, trying to manipulate the lock. While the front group examined windows for potential entry points, they were confident, but subtle changes in their environment had begun to unsettle them, though they did not yet understand why. The dogs remained poised, silent shadows ready to respond instantly to any threat. The woman's heartbeat remained steady, her mind sharp, as she prepared for the inevitable confrontation. She understood that the next moments would define the night, and she was ready. The quiet tension in the air was electric, a palpable awareness that danger was close. She trusted herself, her instincts, and her dogs completely, knowing that together they were prepared for what was to come. Every sound, every movement, every shadow was noted and processed. The gang remained unaware of the precise nature of the obstacle they faced. Their assumption of an easy target was about to be shattered, but not yet. The woman's calm observation, her strategic patience, and the silent readiness of her dogs set the stage for a response that would be swift, decisive, and inescapable. The night was holding its breath, waiting for the moment when preparation would meet action, and when the quiet strength of the woman and her companions would reveal itself fully. The night had grown thick and heavy, the darkness wrapping the property in a quiet tension that seemed to press against every surface. The woman stood near the window, eyes sharp, watching the shadows shift outside. Her dogs had moved into position, bodies tense but silent, muscles coiled like springs ready to release. The calm of the evening had vanished, replaced by the electric anticipation of what was about to unfold. Every sound, every slight movement in the distance, registered in her mind. She had faced danger before, and she knew that the coming minutes required precision, awareness, and courage. The gang had reached the property fully, confident but careless, unaware that the seemingly ordinary house was anything but unprotected. The first man tried the back door again, tugging at the handle, convinced it would give way. At that moment, one of the dogs reacted, moving swiftly with the grace and speed of a trained predator. The dog struck first, barking and lunging in a controlled, precise attack that surprised the intruder completely. He stumbled backward, stunned and frightened, unprepared for the force and discipline of the animal. The woman remained calm inside, observing the unfolding action with a steady hand on the phone, ready to contact authorities if needed. From the front, the other members of the gang were startled by a low growl, a sound that carried a warning they could not ignore. One of the dogs had positioned itself near a window and was making its presence known without leaving the shadows. Its eyes gleamed with intelligence and purpose, and the intruders hesitated. Sensing that their assumptions about the property had been entirely wrong, the tension was immediate, palpable, and growing. Every movement from the gang was now measured, hesitant. As fear began to edge into their confidence, the woman's mind worked swiftly. She had learned over years of experience to remain composed even in high-pressure situations. She knew the capabilities of her dogs, their speed, and their training, and she used that knowledge to predict how the intruders would respond. She whispered small commands, subtle cues only the dogs could understand. In response, they adjusted their positions, eyes locked on each potential threat, ready to act at a moment's notice. The night was alive with quiet tension, every second stretching into eternity. The gang members tried to regroup. Realizing that their initial confidence had been shaken, they whispered harsh words to each other, trying to coordinate an approach, but their fear was evident. Their plans had been simple: rush in, take what they could, and leave before anyone noticed. Now, the situation was far more complicated, and the disciplined, trained responses of the dogs left them uncertain. The woman remained calm, analyzing each movement, each whisper, each attempt at entry and preparing for the next action. The first intruder, recovering from the initial surprise, attempted to move again toward the back door. The dog intercepted with a controlled, strategic move that blocked his path. He tried to push past, but the animal anticipated his steps, using balance and agility to maintain control. The man stumbled, then froze, realizing that this was no ordinary pet. Panic set in, and he shouted warnings to his companions. The dogs were already coordinating their positions, adapting to each new threat seamlessly. From the front, the second intruder tried to break a window. The dog stationed nearby moved silently, slipping through shadows to appear at the exact moment, blocking the approach with precision. The man recoiled, stunned by the sudden movement. The growls and low barks from the dogs filled the night, a sound that carried authority and skill. The woman watched quietly, her heart steady. Knowing that the careful training and instinctive actions of her companions were keeping her safe and controlling the situation, the gang tried to make a run for it. Realizing their attempts at entry were futile, one of them lunged toward the side exit, but another dog intercepted, using its training to hold the intruder in check without causing serious harm. The balance of force and control was exact, a result of countless hours of preparation and experience. The men were overwhelmed by the strategic response, fear replacing confidence, confusion replacing planning. Inside, the woman remained composed. She knew when to act and when to observe, understanding that patience was crucial. Her dogs were extensions of her own strategy, moving with intent and intelligence, adapting to every unexpected maneuver. She kept her eyes on every window, every shadow, every movement, ready to respond to any escalation. Her calmness was a guiding force, a steady presence that allowed the trained animals to perform with accuracy and confidence. The night air was filled with a symphony of controlled barks, growls, and careful footsteps. The gang members were now fully aware that they had underestimated their target. Their initial arrogance had vanished, replaced by fear and hesitation. Each movement was cautious, each step calculated, but the dogs anticipated every action. The woman's quiet command from inside directed the flow of events, and the intruders found themselves trapped in a situation they could not dominate. One of the gang members, attempting to escape over the fence at the edge of the property, was met by one of the dogs who had already anticipated this route. The animal intercepted silently, blocking the path with a presence that was both physical and psychological. The man froze, realizing that escape was not simple, that every move was anticipated. The other members shouted, trying to coordinate assistance, but the strategy and discipline of the dogs left them unable to act effectively. The woman's calm voice guided the situation, a silent signal to the animals, who had been trained for this exact moment. The tension continued to build as the gang tried various tactics, each countered by the trained responses of the dogs. The animals worked with precision, understanding the commands without verbal communication, moving seamlessly from one threat to another. Their discipline was unmatched, their loyalty unquestionable, and their focus absolute. The woman observed with careful calculation, knowing that the right moment to escalate action was approaching, but unnecessary risk was to be avoided. Inside, she considered every possible outcome. The situation had escalated quickly, but her experience allowed her to remain focused. She had faced moments of danger before, situations that required patience, awareness, and careful strategy. Her dogs mirrored her calm, each movement purposeful, each action controlled. The intruders were increasingly disoriented, realizing that they had chosen the wrong target. Fear began to dominate their decisions, and hesitation slowed their movements. Leaving them vulnerable to the precise interventions of the trained animals, the night stretched on. With tension high and anticipation building, every move by the intruders was watched, every attempt to find an advantage met with disciplined responses. The woman remained steady, heart calm, mind clear. She knew that the confrontation was not about brute force alone, but about control, timing, and the seamless cooperation between her and her dogs. Each bark, each movement, strategic response shifted the balance in favor of the defender. Eventually, the gang's confidence eroded completely. They realized that they were dealing with more than they could handle, a force they had not anticipated. The dogs, trained and loyal, continued their careful, precise actions. While the woman maintained a calm presence inside, overseeing the situation without panic, the night was controlled chaos, structured and disciplined. A testament to preparation, trust, and the bond between the woman and her companions. The confrontation reached a critical point when one of the intruders, attempting to break through a secondary door, was met with the full coordination of the dogs. They moved as a team, intercepting with perfect timing and skill, leaving the man no room to maneuver. Panic set in fully, the gang realizing they had misjudged their target entirely. The balance of the encounter had shifted decisively, and the outcome was now beyond doubt. The woman's calm guidance and the dog's training had created a controlled, overwhelming force, turning the intruders' assumptions against them. The night held a tense, silent anticipation, each second stretching into a moment of high stakes. The gang, now fully aware of their miscalculation, attempted to retreat in disarray. The dogs maintained their positions, controlling movement without causing serious injury, guiding the intruders away from key points and maintaining security. The woman observed quietly, understanding that the combination of patience, skill, and loyalty was ensuring her safety and managing the situation efficiently. The confrontation had reached its climax. The balance of control firmly in the hands of the defender and her trained companions. The night air was charged with tension, the quiet broken only by the controlled growls and barks of the dogs and the panicked whispers of the intruders. The woman watched calmly from inside the house, her mind sharp and focused, analyzing every movement, every reaction. Her dogs had already intercepted the gang's initial attempts at entry, and now it was time to turn the situation fully in their favor. Their training, their loyalty, and her guidance were all working together in perfect coordination. One of the intruders, trying to retreat to a safer position, stumbled over uneven ground near the edge of the property. Before he could regain his balance, a dog blocked his path, body tense and eyes locked on him. The man froze, caught between fear and the instinct to flee. His companions shouted from behind, urging him to move, but the disciplined coordination of the dogs left little room for escape. The woman's calm voice directed the animals, guiding their actions with subtle commands they understood immediately. From the front, the remaining members of the gang were trying to regroup, to find some way to gain control. They moved cautiously, aware now that every step was being monitored. The dogs responded seamlessly, adjusting their positions, keeping the intruders contained while preventing any attempt at coordinated movement. The growls and low barks were more than just warning sounds. They were a psychological force, demonstrating control and authority over the situation. The gang's confidence was crumbling, replaced by confusion and fear. The woman remained composed, her heart steady, eyes scanning for any sudden changes. She knew the night could turn unpredictable at any moment, but she trusted her experience and the skills of her companions. Each dog acted not just on training, but on instinct and understanding, working in harmony with her guidance. Their movements were precise, calculated, and decisive. Leaving the gang with no clear path to achieve their goals, one of the men, desperate to find an advantage, made a sudden move toward the back fence, hoping to escape into the woods. Before he could reach it, a dog intercepted, blocking the path with a presence that was both physical and commanding. The man froze, realizing that escape was not simple. The other intruders shouted and gestured, but the coordinated actions of the dogs kept them contained, preventing any regrouping or further action. The woman watched silently, understanding that the night's strategy was unfolding exactly as needed. The gang, now fully aware of their misjudgment, attempted to scatter, each member moving separately to find safety. The dogs adapted instantly, anticipating each direction, moving quickly to intercept and contain without unnecessary aggression. The intruders' fear was evident, their movements hesitant and uncoordinated. Every attempt to challenge the situation was met with precise response, their confidence eroded completely. The woman's calm and calculated oversight ensured that every action of the dogs contributed to control and containment inside the house. The woman kept observing, analyzing, and making small adjustments. Her understanding of the situation allowed her to anticipate the gang's reactions, predicting where they might try to go and positioning the dogs accordingly. Her mind worked like a chessboard, each piece moving strategically to counter every potential threat. The dogs responded instinctively, executing the plan with perfect timing, their loyalty and skill evident in every movement. One intruder, cornered near a tree, attempted to retreat toward the road, hoping to escape unseen. The dog had already anticipated this and positioned itself to intercept, blocking the path silently but effectively. The man hesitated, his fear growing with every second. His companions tried to call him back, but the dogs maintained control, their presence dominating the scene without unnecessary violence. The woman's quiet guidance ensured that the situation remained under control, turning potential chaos into order. The gang realized they were trapped, their attempts at intimidation or escape completely thwarted. Fear and frustration were evident in their body language, their movements now cautious and uncertain. The dogs moved with intelligence, maintaining positions that prevented regrouping and restricted their options. Every bark, every controlled movement, every strategic position was designed to maintain safety while asserting authority. The intruders had underestimated both the woman and her companions, and now they were facing the consequences of that misjudgment. The woman's calm presence inside the house acted as a stabilizing force, guiding the dogs and ensuring the situation did not escalate unnecessarily. She monitored the positions of the intruders, the responses of her companions, and the potential risks, making subtle adjustments that maintained control. The dogs, trained and experienced, followed her guidance seamlessly, their actions precise and effective. The night had transformed from an attempted intrusion into a controlled scenario managed by discipline, strategy, and trust. As the gang continued to struggle with their predicament, the woman took a few moments to reflect. The situation could have been far more dangerous if not for the preparedness, training, and coordination she had with her dogs. Every decision she had made, every lesson learned from past experiences, had contributed to this successful defense. Her calm focus had allowed the animals to act with confidence and precision, ensuring that the intruders were contained without unnecessary harm. The intruders, fully aware that they were outmatched, began to lose hope. Attempts to find alternative routes or create distractions failed. As the dogs had already predicted their movements and maintained control over the property, the woman continued to guide them silently, observing every detail and making small adjustments to ensure complete containment. The night's tension remained high, but the balance of power was firmly in favor of the defender. Finally, the gang members, exhausted and frightened, began to retreat in disarray. The dogs allowed controlled movement away from critical areas, ensuring the intruders could not regroup or pose further threat. The woman remained alert, monitoring the situation until all signs of immediate danger had passed. Her companions' loyalty, skill, and training had turned a potential threat into a managed scenario, demonstrating the power of preparation, strategy, and trust. The night slowly settled into calm once again. The woman's property was secure, her companions vigilant but relaxed, and the intruders had been driven away or contained by the controlled actions of the dogs. She reflected on the events, acknowledging the importance of experience, observation, and patience in managing unexpected danger. The bond between her and her dogs had been the defining factor, their loyalty and skill ensuring safety and order as she moved through her house. Checking that everything was still secure, she felt a sense of calm satisfaction. The night had tested courage, strategy, and coordination, and all had been met successfully. Her companions had performed flawlessly, their training and instincts demonstrating the value of preparation and trust. The intruders had underestimated the wrong target, and the woman's calm, steady presence had turned the situation completely in her favor. The property returned to its quiet state, the tension of the night replaced by the gentle sounds of the countryside. The woman and her dogs remained vigilant, knowing that preparedness was always important, even after a successful defense. She reflected on the night's events, appreciating the skill, loyalty, and intelligence of her companions, and the way her own experience had guided them through a potentially dangerous situation. The calm after the storm was profound, a reminder that vigilance, strategy, and trust could overcome even the most challenging circumstances. The first light of dawn began to creep over the horizon, casting soft hues of pink and gold across the property. The night's tension had faded, replaced by a calm that felt almost surreal after the events that had unfolded. The woman walked outside, her 2 dogs by her side, alert but relaxed now. They had performed flawlessly, their training and instincts guiding the night to a safe resolution. The air was fresh, carrying the scent of wet earth and pine, and the quiet was now a soothing balm after the chaos of hours before. The gang, having realized the strength and preparation of the woman and her companions, had either retreated in haste or been captured by local authorities who had arrived in response to her earlier call. Their confidence had been shattered, their plans completely dismantled. The woman knew that their defeat was not just the result of brute force, but the product of careful preparation, training, and strategic action. She had remained calm throughout, allowing her instincts and experience to guide the actions of her loyal companions. As she walked through the yard, she reflected on the bond between herself and the dogs. They had been trained for situations that most people could never imagine, yet they were more than just protectors. They were companions, partners, and extensions of her own instincts. The trust and loyalty between them had been the foundation of the successful defense, and she appreciated them not just for their skill, but for their unwavering devotion and understanding. Every movement and action had been in harmony. Demonstrating the strength of that connection, she moved around the property, checking that everything was still secure. Doors and windows were intact, fences undisturbed, and no signs of forced entry were present. It was clear that the night's events had been contained effectively, with no lasting damage. The woman felt a sense of calm satisfaction, knowing that her preparation and the capabilities of her companions had prevented what could have been a far more dangerous situation. The peace of the morning seemed to reward her vigilance and careful planning. The dogs followed her closely, moving with a quiet energy that reflected both their training and their awareness of the events that had just taken place. They remained alert, scanning the environment. But their posture was relaxed now, a clear signal that the immediate threat had passed. The woman observed them with a sense of gratitude and respect. Knowing that their actions had been crucial in maintaining safety, she knelt to stroke their heads, a quiet acknowledgement of their bravery and skill, and they responded with calm, steady eyes, reflecting their understanding of the bond they shared. She thought back to the moments of confrontation, remembering the tension, the quick decisions, and the precision with which the dogs had acted. Every action had been calculated, every response instinctive, yet guided by her strategic oversight. The gang had underestimated the situation, and that underestimation had allowed the woman and her companions to maintain control. It was a reminder that preparation, awareness, and discipline could outweigh raw force and that calm. Thoughtful action was often the most effective response to danger. Authorities had arrived shortly after the confrontation. Alerted by her early call and the disturbances outside, they assessed the scene, quickly understanding that the intruders had been intercepted by highly trained animals. Under the careful guidance of their owner, the officers praised the woman for her calm and precise handling of the situation, recognizing that her preparation and the disciplined actions of the dogs had prevented harm and ensured that the intruders could not escape easily. It was clear that the night had been managed with exceptional skill and composure. The intruders were taken into custody or had fled. Disoriented and defeated, their plans entirely thwarted. The woman remained at a distance, observing quietly, ensuring that the property remained secure. Her presence was calm but authoritative, reflecting her understanding of the situation and her ability to maintain control without unnecessary escalation. The dogs continued to move through the yard, checking and patrolling, their movements deliberate and measured, a testament to their training and the trust between them and their owner. As the sun rose higher, casting warm light across the property, the woman reflected on the lessons of the night. She thought about the importance of vigilance, the value of preparation, and the power of trust and loyalty. The events had tested courage, skill, and strategy, and every challenge had been met successfully. The calm, measured approach she had taken had allowed her to maintain control, guiding her companions and ensuring that the situation was resolved safely and effectively. She moved through the house, performing final checks and making small adjustments to ensure everything was in order. The kitchen, the doors, the windows, and the yard were all secure, a testament to her attention to detail and careful planning. She paused to consider the bond with her dogs, understanding that their skill and loyalty were inseparable from her own ability to manage and respond to the threat. The partnership had been tested and proven, a reminder of the strength that comes from experience, trust, and preparation. The dogs lay down in the sunlit yard, resting but still alert, their presence a comforting constant. The woman watched them with a quiet smile, appreciating their patience and discipline, their understanding of the situation, and their readiness to act when required. She knew that the bond they shared went beyond training. It was built on mutual respect, understanding, and the shared experience of overcoming challenges together. That bond had ensured safety and maintained order. During a night that could have been far more dangerous, neighbors and local authorities would likely speak of the events in hushed tones, astonished at the unexpected outcome and the efficiency with which the situation had been handled. The woman, however, understood that the success was not the result of luck, but of preparation, calm decision-making, and the seamless coordination between herself and her companions. The night had tested their resolve and abilities, and they had emerged successfully unscathed and in control. The woman spent the rest of the morning tending to her home and property, performing routine tasks with the same care and attention that had guided her through the previous night. Her dogs followed closely, their eyes occasionally glancing toward the edges of the property, still aware but no longer tense. The balance of calm vigilance and relaxation was restored, a reflection of the discipline and training that had guided them through the night. The events had concluded, but the lessons and the bond formed through shared experience would remain by midday. The property was fully quiet, peaceful, and secure. The woman sat on her porch again, much like the previous evening, reflecting on the events and appreciating the calm that had returned. Her dogs rested nearby, alert but relaxed, their presence a comforting reassurance of the night's successful defense. She thought about how preparation, patience, and trust had made all the difference, and she felt a quiet sense of pride and satisfaction. The night's confrontation had demonstrated more than just the skill of the dogs. It had highlighted the importance of observation, strategic thinking, and calm composure. The woman understood that these qualities were what had kept her safe, what had allowed her to guide her companions effectively, what had ensured that the intruders could not achieve their goals. The experience reinforced the value of readiness and awareness, and the peace that now settled over the property was a reward for the discipline and careful planning that had been exercised. As the sun set that evening, casting long shadows across the yard, the woman reflected on the night's events once more. She thought about the bond with her dogs, the skills they had demonstrated, and the calm approach that had allowed her to manage a dangerous situation successfully. The property was once again quiet, the events of the night now behind them, leaving a sense of relief, satisfaction, and quiet pride. The woman and her dogs had faced the challenge together, and together they had emerged safely and unshaken. The story of that night would remain with her, a testament to vigilance, trust, and the power of preparation.